Hello and welcome. My name is Nathan. I'm a corporate executive by day, working at a network automation startup firm. And by night, I've been trying my hand a little bit at indie game development. It's something I've always been interested in and just recently decided to just take the plunge and see how you develop games in my spare time. I've been building a corporate fantasy satirical culture type game, mixing some action adventure style in with roguelike mechanics and just really learning the space and how you actually create a game. Everything's in a 2D world. I didn't want to dip into 3D just yet, but what I did today was put together a overview of the first month of what I've been doing, what I've been working on, and where I'm headed. So, since I am a corporate executive who loves PowerPoint presentations, I created a little bit of a presentation. We can go through that today, and that way it'll be a good touch point of like the first iteration or the first month of the development experience. We have Eddie over here just chilling in the background. He's guarding the house. So, let's just go ahead and get into it. So I did make this in Prezi, and it looks pretty, and I like it. So this is what the style we're gonna use. Um, as far as the game development experience as a whole, I always knew that it was going to be kind of challenging to just dive right into the culture, and only recently have the tools become accessible enough to where someone like me can go in their spare time and really dive into the game development world. I mean, before really, Godot and these modern editors with their mechanics, it was very hard to just dive right into the game development experience. You had to learn a whole bunch of code, you had to figure out a whole bunch of stuff, and it just felt way too daunting. But with some of these platforms coming out, and then also with the modern developments in AI and asset creation, things like that, it just felt way more obtainable to do as a creative side project. So this is 1 month in. This is my game called Burnt Out, and it's you play this little flame-like character, this corporate intern that's going in and just trying to survive through the sprint cycles. That's kind of the gist of the game so far. So my first week in game development was really spent around figuring out how do you do the things. So the first thing I had to do was install an engine. I had, chose between the big three, Unity, Unreal, and Godot. I went with Godot simply because it was open source, seemed easy to install. I didn't have to go and do a bunch of like Xcode installations or anything like that. So that's the engine I chose. It wasn't really anything more than that. Here, I'm gonna make this a little bit there. Perfect. After the chosen engine came just learning the basics of what is a scene, what is a node, what is a script, how do they all interplay and connect with each other, how do you function and do anything. And I started with just this little purple square on the screen and figured out how to put a progress bar on there with some damage waves. And that was really like my first scene, was just looking at the little purple square and watching the damage go down. This was essential. What I just kept doing was building on, as I went, I would just keep building new feature sets, being like, oh, if I want, damage to occur, how do I prevent that damage? How do I revive characters that go down? Things like that. It just progressed from like one function to the next. And then I used a bunch of ChatGPT. I dove right in and used it basically as my learning mechanism for this. Just understanding with context, like the questions being asked, and really diving headfirst into just getting some characters on the screen that were not rectangles and squares. I'm learning, month in, I'm learning that there's a reason why game developers use rectangles and cleared out stuff. And we could talk about that in a little bit about my revamped design. After taking a little bit of a break, I had just kind of found myself going into like an artistic rabbit hole where everything that I put on the screen was, browns and yellows. And I had to take a step back from that because you can kind of find yourself like suffocating on a color palette, if that makes sense. But it was really helpful just to do fast prototypes of different, characters, different models, different backgrounds, and just not relying on my own artistic ability in order to do that. And then also with the contextual chats and questions and answers that came up were pretty easy to solve. So after that, in week two was really where I went in and developed the first prototype of the game. So just expanding upon what I was learning and making this clicker game. So it was all mouse driven. Getting in there with the different backgrounds. I actually took and cut out the characters from the background image that ChatGPT gave me. So I used the like a GIMP tool in order to cut out all the different characters and then use those as the sprites for the game. And really just building on those mechanics of damage and defenses and things like that. Really grabbing into that corporate life culture, trying to add little funny things here and there, like a pizza party and victory loops, as well as standing desks and incorporating the health bars and blocking damage and things like that. For week three, it really came around to play testing the game itself. I started to put it out and share it with people. And what I learned very quickly was, I thought it was cool. I was having a really good time developing the game and learning the mechanics, and that portion was a lot of fun. But what I realized was it wasn't actually fun to play. I showed it to a couple of friends, watched how they interacted with the game, watched how they played with the game. And for as an example, one of my friends was trying to use coffee to heal, which was their natural inclination because it was like, oh, I need a heal mechanism for this health or energy bar. And I didn't have a way to heal. It was just a pure defensive game, which after I got back and I thought about it for a day or two, I realized, oh, I need a mechanism in order to heal, or I need to lean in to the way that people generally interact and play with the games. So right in week three, I was like, yep, playtesting is going to be a huge component to the development cycle. Just putting it in front of people and really seeing how they interact with the game. So what I did find was it just felt really passive and limited player options. Like it wasn't more of like a game, and it didn't, going back and saying like, oh, it's super boring. It's like that's not the intention. The intention was like, hey, how can I make this more enjoyable, more fun, more interactive, and closer to what like I envision as a game when I think of a game. So took a really hard look at the game as itself and said like, yeah, there's just something missing here. It's something that I don't really feel good about investing a lot of time into. Although I could have probably closed out that clicker game and called it good after a couple of weeks of polish, I definitely wanted to reevaluate the design itself and make sure it was something that I was still invested in for the long term. So here's our little game redesign, and this is where we came into just focusing more on the games I grew up with and loved, like the old school Zelda and just action RPG style games. I really wanted to incorporate a narrative story element into it, and the clicker game it just had a lot of limitations when it came to it. I also wanted keyboard interaction and to move the character around like it came from a controller. So that's when I started leaning into and redesigning what I had built around into more of like an action RPG. And I also at that time kind of refined the intro character, who I've named Spark, which is just this corporate intern who is just looking to keep his light, keep his energy throughout the corporate lifestyle and environment. So really, what I wanted to do was blend in the corporate space and almost call that like a dungeon or like the exploring environment, and then also have the character build him out, flesh him out a little bit more. I had played around with a few different designs around At one point I had a potato season, and then I had a couple character designs coming out. But I think like a flame, a little spark dude is the essence of what I want to portray in the game, focused around burnout. And I know it's 100% on the nose, but it's fine. We can be 100% on the nose for this game. And I also incorporated some more features. So when I made the shift into an action adventure style, or at least that's what I want, is to lean more action adventure, I had to come up with a few other elements to keep the action moving, if you will. So one of the things I identified when working in the puzzle sequences and the puzzle rooms was the damage was very uh, oppressive, and the character's health went down very fast, which got them into burnout states, which eventually it's going to be a part of the game is to get there. But I just wanted a couple additional power ups or additional feature sets that we could have for the character. So the first thing I did was create this little health shield integration, and I actually last night just finished with the progression sequences here as the icons go, where it was like a little health bar right next to the other health bar, and I wanted to make durability or it look like it was a shield breaking. So that's what I did. I queued up some ChatGPT images, grabbed some good shield options, and then as the player's health deteriorates, goes from 100%, 75%, 50, 25, 0, you have these different icons that show up. And then there's just a screen flare that says, hey, shield's broken. So it just adds a little bit of flavor, and it adds a little bit of that fantasy element into that action RPG. An additional thing that's going to be coming soon is some sprint rituals. So, additionally, throughout the world, I'm going to be putting in things like speed boosts, things like health options, other this is in my coming soon section. I think this is a duplicate slide, but really just putting in some more ritualistic spaces and to lean into the like corporate cult fantasy slash or corporate rituals, being like, hey, you have a maintenance candle, or you have a speed boost, or you have a health boost, or something like that, just making it a little bit more action friendly. And then refining the roguelike system. So right now I have all of the elements that's on the screen. So I do have, the exploratory, the puzzle rooms, which is the fighting portion, an upgrade shop, if you will, that you can, restore your health and get shields. And you also have like the repeat, but if your health deteriorates all the way, there is a respawn sequence right now that's just a very quick splash screen. So just refining that roguelike system as well, because at some point, it's going to help address the themes and the narratives of burnout within the corporate space. I do, I'm a little hesitant on the roguelike system just because I know there's so many different versions of those games coming out. I don't want this to just be one of those games. That's why I'm trying to mix the like action RPG style in with roguelike systems, because I think using the roguelike system to talk about or to theme out burnout makes sense. But I don't just want to make like a very quick roguelike game, call it a day. I kind of want it to be also having like a narrative story element where you tell like an actual story throughout the game. And then yeah, shifting into smart satire, just keeping it humorous. You gotta have fun with games, right? So you gotta have poke fun at the corporate culture, which I have no shortage of examples that I can pull from my previous career and my daily life. Just pulling those in, keeping it fun, keeping it light. That's the intention. It's not to be negative towards the space. It's just to kind of poke fun at corporate culture a little bit and say, hey, let's talk about themes of burnout. Let's talk about themes around how can you reserve your energy or keep your own energy high while there's just a bunch of craziness going on around you. And I think a lot of us can relate to that those sorts of themes and that sort of tone. So that's what I want to do. Just want to keep it fun. So coming soon. So we just finished month one of development. We say we, I mean myself and the little corgi. So Eddie and I just finished month one of our development, and I'm headed into month two, looking at like what sort of things do I want to accomplish in this next month. And really, it just goes around three elements. So we have upgrading our toggle puzzle. Right now, the room is a little bit monochrome, and when I was looking at the playtest, I noticed that it was a little hard to notice the toggles for one in order to like interact with them. So I want to change up that room, make it a little bit more obvious when you step into the space. And then also I wanted to incorporate like a scaling factor. Now I have no idea how to do this yet, but I think it'd be really fun that you enter the room and there's just one toggle there that you switch on, and then once you solve that puzzle, there's two toggles that pop up. And if you solve the two toggle puzzle, it pops up three and then four and then five, and it just keeps going. So I want to instantiate nodes, and I want to figure out how do you bring those in through code, place them in spots relative to each other, because I don't want to have to make 50 scenes for that one room. So I want to figure out how to do that in code and just instantiate each toggle as you solve the previous puzzle. And then I also want to do a scaling factor on the reward system. So you get 1 point per toggle basically that you solve. And so if, on the first level you get 1 point, second level you get 2 points. So just have like the reward system scale with you so it incentivizes the player to stay in the room. And then when you leave the room, everything resets. So if you got up to 10 toggles that you were solving, but your health is really low, so you decide to leave the room and go get a health potion or, go get a shield or something like that, you enter the room again, it's reset back down to one. So I think that would be kind of a fun mechanic to play with. Secondly, is themed after all the bugs that I've had to solve and squash in this game, is I want to build a bug squishing room. So uh, basically, walk in, you get a big hammer, and you just go to town, squishing some bugs and smashing some bugs. So I want to have a couple different bug styles in the room and just figure out the mechanics around. Okay, how do you squish bugs? How do the collisions work between the player and the bugs? And oh, by the way, I need a weapon. Like, what does the hammer look like? All of that stuff. So I'm going to be focusing on that and just getting like a first version of that bug squishing room. And then thirdly, I just wanted some sort of an intro sequence. So, did Spark get hired at Corp? Like how in Corp is the I started putting Corp dash whatever in my editor whenever I talked about like the corporate environment. So I've decided the business is called just Corp. And so, how did Spark get hired at Corp? Right? How like what was the interview process like? What was the onboarding process like? Could we use the onboarding process in order to explain the game mechanics a little bit more? And would it be fun to say like, oh, this is how you go through the interview, or this is how he got hired, and that's kind of what teaches people about the game. So I kind of want to noodle around that this month as well. Maybe not finish it out, but just kind of map out or tile out a little intro sequence for the game. And that is my first month. Let's pop back over here. That's my first month of game development and really learning around this space. I knew nothing about game development when I started the month, and now I feel like I have a better handle, we'll say. I have a better handle and understanding about game design, game development, and man, there's so many different choices you can make within this space. It's a lot of fun. And then I also took a break, like a few days, and I dumped myself into Expedition 33. That game's incredible. I was playing that. I was playing Night Rain for Elden Ring, Night Rain, and just going back to those games, I can just appreciate. I'm sorry, going back to those games, I can just appreciate like how much work is involved in making something look good and feel good. It's definitely made me think about the game I'm creating, making me think about like the experience I'm creating, but also like it's very incredible like all the games that are just out there right now and how smooth they play and how wonderful they look. It's fun to just like look at them through a different lens now. So that's what I have today. I have a long weekend this weekend, which is great. So I'm gonna start charging down and knocking some of those things out, and then maybe I'll give a little overview of like where I am now versus over the course of the weekend and put up another video. But that's all I got for you today. I'll see you in the next one.